Well, the Supreme Court has denied a request to revisit its decision on same-sex marriage. That request came from former Kentucky County Clerk Kim Davis, who in 2015 defied a court order by refusing to issue same-sex marriage licenses to same-sex couples.
The High Court refused the appeal without comment. Davis was hoping to overturn a lower court ruling that had ordered her to pay $360,000 in damages and attorney fees to a same-sex couple. The lawyer who argued the Obergefell case, Mary Bonato, said in a statement, quote, "Today, millions of Americans can breathe a sigh of relief for their families, current or hoped for, because all families deserve equal rights under the law."
Davis's team, however, appears confident that Obergefell will eventually get overturned. One of her lawyers, Matthew Staver, said that the opinion was, quote, "egregiously wrong from the start. It is not a matter of if, but when the Supreme Court will overturn Obergefell."
Democratic Senator John Fetterman reacted on X, writing, "Marriage equality is the law of the land. Freedom to pick your partner is a fundamental part of the American way of life."
Meanwhile, political commentator Link Lauren wrote this: "I've had friends calling for months to say, I need to speak up about this. Do they ever get tired of being outraged over nothing?" There was, I think the conservative perspective, or the gay conservative perspective, is that liberals were fear-mongering over this, and there was almost no chance the Supreme Court was going to revisit the issue, and they have decided not to revisit the issue, so there was no reason to be all that concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those issues where public opinion really has changed radically, and there's really very little support for overturning same-sex marriage.
Although, frankly, it's come down a little bit in recent years, which
it has
a variety of possible reasons for that. But.
Right, but over the longer term, the difference is wild. I was just looking at the Gallup figures. Back in the mid-90s, only 27% of people supported same-sex marriage and 68% opposed. By last year, that was almost exactly reversed, 68% supporting and 29% opposed. I think the reason, to defend the Liberal side from the charge of fear-mongering a little bit, I think a lot of the genuine fear stems from Clarence Thomas at the time that Roe versus Wade was overturned. Thomas, in that decision, gave this opinion where he talked about the idea that the Supreme Court was going to have to correct the error in other cases. I won't get too deep into the jurisprudence of this, but he basically thinks that the same principle applies to that was struck down in Roe versus Wade to several other cases. Not only the one that deals with same-sex marriage, but one that deals with just same-sex sex, and like weirdly the provision of contraception as well, contraceptives. So that statement on his part, I think, is part of the Liberal fear, as is the fact that I had, in fact, forgotten about this. 3 of the 9 justices who are still on the court, where they had opposed the Obergefell ruling in the first place. Now, John Roberts was one of the 3. He apparently has said virtually nothing on the issue since then. But that math plus the Clarence Thomas factor, I think, is what disconcerts Liberals.
Well, I'm probably going to blow your mind here, Niall, but I mean, if I'm being perfectly honest, I agree with the dissenters, even though I am...
Shocking.
Well, I'm in support of same-sex marriage. I don't think it's in the Constitution that a state is required. I would vote for it. If I lived in a state where it was on the ballot, I would vote for it. I'm in support of it. But just like abortion, I don't think it is required under the Constitution. The states are required to recognize contracts in other states, so the state should be required to... Texas has to recognize a marriage performed in New York, but I would say that if they don't want to recognize gay marriages, then that's their choice. And that's the wrong choice, but I would just...
But sure,
I don't think the Constitution forces them to do it, so I disagree with the majority in that ruling.
But the difference is, in abortion, though, there's the whole issue of whether the Constitution guarantees the right to privacy, which I think is dubious. I think in same-sex marriage, there's a much stronger argument to be made about equal protection, right?
Yeah, it is a stronger argument, but I'm vigorously in favor of legislators, choosing to make that the law of their state, but. I guess I wouldn't have the feds impose it on unwilling states. Now, Kim Davis, who sued, is a different. She's a clerk who needs to, she should not. She's a federal employee. She has to follow the law as prescribed by the court. So I don't support her quixotic crusade on this at all.
To allow herself to make up the laws. Coming up, I'll be discussing how the Trump administration has used the battle over SNAP benefits for political ends and the consequences that can emerge from that. Stick around.